How many actually know what they're looking at?
In my experience, not that many, which is hardly surprising. Modern art is fabulous, but it can be quite tricky. And to be honest, places like this with their captions don't always help. They can be full of juxtapositions and praxises and talk about assemblages. They can baffle more than enlighten. Which is why I've written What Are You Looking At?, which is an informal, anecdotal but fantastic book of modern art, in which I'll explain why this, or something really quite like this, is one of the most important artworks of the 20th century. It was created by Marcel Duchamp, a French artist, who walked into a plumber's merchant's in Manhattan and bought a urinal. He took it home, he signed it en masse and dated it 1917. It changed everything. Suddenly, art could be made out of anything.
Isso é arte. Esse livro nos leva a uma viagem por um mundo fascinante. O bom é que você pode ler os capítulos sem obedecer necessariamente à ordem natural. Aqui, a história da arte é contada como se o autor estivesse numa conversa com você. O texto é direto, flui com uma simplicidade sofisticada do autor Will Gompertz, editor de arte da BBC. Nosso encontro foi num lindo dia perto do mar do Rio de Janeiro. O livro tem ilustrações de telas fundamentais. Há também ilustrações com o fino humor desse inglês, como nesse desenho que critica os oportunistas de ocasião. Um pintor que, de repente, percebeu ter desperdiçado metade da sua vida fazendo suas peculiares telas com asteriscos.
You know, there's lots of terrible art. We should be clear about that. You know, when people aren't very honest about that. We're told all art is great. Well, it's not. There's lots of work in our museums and in collections which is, frankly, rubbish and won't stand the test of time.
Give me an example.
Oh, you are a rascal. I would say some of, I'd say some of Damien Hirst's work isn't so great. He would admit the same. You know, he says he's only made 4 great works of art. 4 works of art he's really proud of.
Why a work of art becomes a masterpiece like Mona Lisa? Everyone wants to go to see Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
And then we cannot see Mona Lisa, we can see heads.
Yeah. There's a very good story about, I think one of Leonardo's paintings went to Japan. I can't remember which one it was. And it went on tour to Japan, and what happened was, it was so many people went to see it that each person saw it for 3 seconds. You can't see a work of art in 3 seconds, especially Leonardo. The trouble with it, when a work becomes like a so-called masterpiece, almost it becomes impossible to see it properly again, because you have all these layers of preconceived ideas. You've been told by society you must love this painting. It's kind of harder to see it. And what's interesting is that most masterpieces, when they were made, weren't considered to be very good. So if you think of Picasso's Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, considered by everybody to be a masterpiece now, he painted it in 1907. And it was derided, it was abused, people thought it was rubbish. It was only in 1937, 30 years later, when the Museum of Modern Art in America acquired that work and started showing it, it became famous.
And what about contemporary art now?
Well, some of it's terrible and some of it's very, very good. And we have to be able to be open-minded enough to understand that something we think is bad to begin with might actually turn out to be a masterpiece. That artist might have the ability, like great artists, to think ahead. As humans, we always find new ideas threatening. We're kind of frightened of new ideas. We're more comfortable with what we know.
Why don't we have just ism, like impressionism, expressionism, and now we have what kind of ism?
Well, I write about this in the book, and I talk about this idea of entrepreneurialism, that artists have become like business people, they've become like brands. And there's definitely that movement. That's what's happened over the last 20 years. Artists have become brands. I suspect what's going to happen next is a move back to street art and the art of much more authentic art, and I suspect that will be the next ism. It should be much more again back to the art of the people, art outside of museums or outsider art.
Dos capítulos mais interessantes é sobre o pintor francês Paul Cézanne, o pai de todos nós, por ter aberto portas definitivas.
I love Cézanne.
I know you love him, me too.
Yeah.
So he was just a turning point. Somehow.
He was a turning point. He was the first artist to paint using two eyes. Before Cézanne, all artists painted using one eye. You see a landscape painting and everything would be in absolute detail, or you would look at a fruit basket and you just see it from one point of view. But Cézanne realised that we see things not with monocularly but binocularly, with two eyes, and also we move around, we move our heads, so we look at something from lots of different angles. So he was the first artist to start to paint an image from two different angles. If you look at any of his famous fruit still lives, you can see often that you see them from the front and you see them from the top. And from that invention came Cubism. It came the whole idea that we look at things from multiple perspectives, and that led to the whole of modern art. It became conceptual. The other thing Cézanne did, which was amazing, was before Cézanne, if an artist painted a landscape, they would say to you and me, "This is what I see." When Cézanne paints a landscape, he says, "Is this what I see?"